During my quest to determine the NBA's worst overall defenders so far this season, I came across 10 different players that are extremely prone to allowing easy buckets. This was done by adding player stats from across 3 different advanced metrics: defensive RAPTOR, defensive DPM, and defensive LeBron, which surprisingly has nothing to do with the King. Additional information on these 3 categories is available in the description. So as I was saying, the formula used to determine whether or not a player is one of the NBA's worst defenders was defensive RAPTOR plus defensive DPM plus defensive LeBron. There are 2 main reasons I went with this approach. The first being that each advanced method used to quantify an NBA player's defensive performance has its own unique set of flaws. Combining multiple categories reduces the impact of those flaws. The second reason is that RAPTOR, DPM, and LeBron ratings share a very small, very similar range. All 3 categories use 0 to represent average, positive single-digit values to represent above average, and negative single-digit values to represent below average. Alright, so here's a quick example of the equation. Player ABC has himself a negative 1.3 defensive RAPTOR, negative 1.8 defensive DPM, and a negative 1.9 defensive LeBron. If we add those 3 together, we get negative 5.0. While player ABC, who is actually Trae Young, is a below average defender, he didn't qualify as one of the league's worst. And that's because the players featured in this video include only the ones whose 3 categories totaled negative 6.0 or lower. Like player XYZ, for example, who is actually our 10th worst overall defender, Malik Beasley. The 26-year-old has been porous his entire career, and I'm not expecting that to change during his time with the Lakers. After Malik Beasley is Pistons rookie Jaden Ivey. It was a rough first few months in the league for the 5th overall pick out of Purdue. With that being said, as the Pistons presumably improve over the next couple of years, so should the ultra-athletic Ivey. Following Jaden Ivey is the 8th worst overall defender, Bones Hyland. The now Los Angeles Clipper has been brutal defensively this season, much worse than he was a year ago. Hopefully, the change of scenery helps Bones turn things around. Next up, we have 2014 NBA champion Patty Mills. Only 13.3 minutes of action per game this year for Mills. It'll be interesting to see if the 34-year-old calls it a career or returns in the fall for his 15th season. After the former San Antonio Spur, it's on to a current San Antonio Spur, Keldon Johnson. Greg Popovich's squad entered the All-Star break on a 14-game losing streak, which is actually the same amount of games they've won so far. Been over a quarter century now since the Tim Duncan draft. You know what I mean? Anywho, Utah's Jordan Clarkson is the 5th worst defender. The former Laker and Cavalier has always been a subpar defender, but his current negative 3.6 defensive RAPTOR is by far the worst of his career. Following Jordan Clarkson is Malachi Branham. While the rookie's been getting buckets recently, unfortunately for him, he owns the league's 2nd worst defensive RAPTOR rating, as well as the 3rd worst defensive LeBron. Exactly how Popovich drew it up. Alright, on to the 3 worst defenders, with the bronze medal officially belonging to Houston's Jalen Green. A 121 defensive rating so far this season for Green, brutal. Negative 2.5 defensive DPM, brutal. 13-45 record for the Rockets, brutal. After Jalen Green is the 2nd worst overall defender, Bojan Bogdanovic. Despite having his name thrown around in all sorts of potential trade deadline deals, the Pistons held on to Bogdanovic. He actually just signed a contract extension in October, so the stage is set for the 3-point specialist to return to Detroit for the 2023-2024 season. And finally, the title as the NBA's worst overall defender goes to college basketball legend Doug McDermott. As you can see, Dougie Buckets barely beat out Green and Bogdanovic to take home the crown. His negative 4.3 defensive RAPTOR is the worst in the league, as well as the worst of his 11-year NBA career. So there you have it, the NBA's worst overall defenders so far this season. The fact that 3 of the 10 are San Antonio Spurs is insane. Or is it genius? Thank you very much for tuning in to Always Hoops. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash the like button.